And the whole joke was Big Brother producers just making them do random stupid stuff that no one does in real life. When I was a kid, I did think those segments were real. I was a very naive child. I don't want to hear about it. You might love it, you might hate it, but I'm going to be really annoyed and you're going to hear me complain about it if and when it happens. Expect the unexpected. Week 2 was supposed to be easy. Devins won HOH. Devins had good initial nominees. He started to set himself up and his alliance to go pretty decently far. Then Devins won veto. Didn't need to win veto, Devins, but that's okay. Then Devins decides, hey, we're going to target the showmance. Then Devins pulls off half of that showmance instead of just putting the entire showmance on the block. And when all was said and done, even the Queen of Rome herself had to take a swing, bringing him down. While Rome was an empire starting to crumble beneath its feet, the enemy empire started pointing their golden pistols right at each other. But hey.
Welcome to Live Eviction Night on Big Brother.
What's up, everyone? I'm Dak. My hair looks whack, and I don't give a crap because I'm back for another BB Sunday service. Guys, week 2 is officially in the books. And while Rome leaving definitely was the big event of this week, I actually think the more interesting story is what happened around it. Because on paper, you would think this was Devins' week. He won HOH, he got out who he wanted to get out. His ultimate goal, I do believe ultimately, was Rome, and he was able to accomplish that fairly successfully, I will say. But the problem relies in just how messy the rest of this week truly was. Now, this is no shade to Devins at all. First off, I love Devins. I think he's a phenomenal Survivor player. I think he's a phenomenal entertainment piece for these game shows, for shows like Survivor and Big Brother. And I do still think he's going to do a pretty good job in Big Brother. But Devins is a showman. And first and foremost, what he cares about is putting out the fireworks, making a big scene, making a big party, and showing off to everyone. And as a fan of Survivor, Big Brother, I love it. The fans love it. It's pretty obvious based on BB Unlocked. But the problem is that doesn't necessarily necessitate setting yourself up well in the future of this game. And while I do think that there are some people within the Toolshed Alliance that are going to have a really great position in the house moving forward after this week, the Toolshed Alliance itself, it's done. Now, it may not be done, not quite yet, but all of the pieces have been starting to set in play for that big alliance to crumble. Because right now, Barrett and Drew have started to realize they're on the bottom of that Toolshed Alliance. And remember, the Toolshed Alliance is an offshoot from the Crossovers Alliance, merged with the Red Door, the red Corner, that's it, the Red Corner. But they did start to pick up pretty early on the fact that the Toolshed Alliance was really more so all of the icons plus Red Corner, and they were kind of just a bonus for that. Now, up until the last few days of last week, Drew really was starting to have a really good position on both sides of the house. And he had really good connections on both sides of the house, being aligned with the Toolshed and also having really close relationships with people on the other side. But it wasn't long before a few people started to clock that. And Angela and Dee specifically have really taken notice of Drew being so well positioned on both sides. And they're starting to get very nervous about that. On the flip side, Drew and Barrett are really happy, at least as far as we can tell up until maybe a day ago. I'm about a day behind. But so far, they don't seem to be all that unhappy with the icons themselves in their alliance. More so the other side of the Toolshed, where you have Kamu, Haley, and Chuck joining their crossover alliance. Now, Drew specifically, as we'll learn later, Drew doesn't have as big of a concern with Keanu. Now, I can't actually honestly tell you at the moment if Barrett has any major concerns or issues with, not Keanu, Kamu. Is it Kamu? Oh man, I'm sorry, bud. Hold up. Oh, that's my bad. Now, I do think the main focus for those two, Barrett and Drew, is Haley and Chuck, because it does look like Drew and Kamu. Now, it does look like Barrett and Drew are starting to try and form some version of a final two. But I still think there's quite a bit more work to do to really solidify this relationship between those two. And I think if they are able to, if they're able to put in that work, if they're able to build that trust and loyalty and make really good moves that actually work out and pay off, I could really see them going very far as a dynamic duo together. But it's going to take some time to see what they're able to do with the opportunities they're given in the next few weeks to really start positioning the house the way they feel most comfortable moving forward for the longevity of their game. But it is just going to be a matter of time waiting to see if they actually are able to do that. And I do want to take just a second to talk about Drew by himself, because I honestly, from the preseason, what we got of the preseason, did not anticipate him becoming one of the bigger potential sleeper picks of Big Brother 28. Now, I have seen the comments all over the place, and yeah, I get the aesthetic comparison of a baby Dan Gheesling. And do I actually think Drew has the potential to be at least in the same category of player as Dan? It's really early to tell, but I do see that potential. That potential. Drew is not Dan Gheesling Jr. He ain't baby Dan. Call him whatever you want. We are far, far from having another Dan Gheesling. Very far from that. But the fact that we're even having this conversation right now, it just kind of goes to show how exciting the potential for Drew really is moving forward, as long as he is able to keep a restraint on his perception. Angela is absolutely one of the hardest players for me to let myself admit how well I think she's doing in the house. Her personality is a little too strong for me. That being said, even if sometimes it's really hard for me to watch her, I'm also becoming really, really impressed with her gameplay itself. She adapted very early on, and she learned, I think, from watching Rachel last season, just how valuable that returning player position can be, especially when it's so scarce. But this is a really interesting dynamic to just have three come and play Big Brother along with all of these new players, because it does make that pool far much smaller, but the pool they're swimming in is the pool of, hey, whether the new players want to admit it or not, they do know that the legend players have some bit of experience and better comprehension of what is happening, at least in these first few early weeks. And I think Angela has really utilized that perspective and that position really well. She started to learn how to, I wouldn't say puppet master by any means, but influence other people's decisions. Now, the last week was Devin's. He does, if he sees the nugget of fun, awesome craziness that he loves, and he thinks he can turn that into something, he's just going to run with that. And I love that. But it's also not the most challenging player to try and get to do what you want to do for the week. And I guess we'll talk a little bit about Jason. Jason did do a pretty good job at the blockbuster competition. He was able to clutch it. And I think we did even hear Rome talk about either in his eviction speech or in BB Unlocked. He had it after a point and had seen the layout and was able to solve it. But he got too confused early on, mixed it up, and we see just how fast it can slip away from you just like that. But I do think he did a really good job with that blockbuster competition. Is it a very big insight onto how he's going to do in future comps or even future blockbusters? Maybe with blockbusters, if he is still thrown in that position a bunch, that could be a decent space for him to live in for a while, as uncomfortable as it is to live in that blockbuster space. But we'll see how far that pays off for him. He did recognize just how messy of a game he had during week one, especially after having Angela call him out. He has at least recognized that what he did, that he got called out for and got thrown under the bus for, how messy it was, and that he needs to at least reanalyze his gameplay. I'm hopeful that even though he recognized it, it doesn't just turn into more noise in the back of his head and he doesn't actually follow through and pay attention to that moving forward. The eviction vote, it happened. We had it. It was a 12-1 vote. I'm still not 100% sure why Taylor did throw the hinky vote, but that did actually present us with a really fun exit interview. And guys, you know what? I'll just say it here. I had a lot of fun with Rome's exit interview. I really did. I'll be honest, I don't know the song. I I think it's supposed to be Lyric's dad that either wrote or sang that song or both. I don't know. I didn't get all that, but it was funny to me. And I gotta say, Julie and production as a whole, they're starting to loosen up some more. In fact, we are gonna bring up, I think there's only one, maybe two things from BB Unlocked that are actually relevant to a spoiler section or the game itself. But there is one thing, no spoilers, that I'll bring up that they actually showed. It was a TikTok reel, whatever, and it was Kelly Wentworth from Survivor, a player I have a lot of respect for from her seasons. And she did a whole bit about the producers staging the, hey, you just found your Big Brother key moment that all of the house guests have to record every season for the premiere. And it was, the whole joke was Big Brother producers just making them do random stupid stuff that no one does in real life to pretend that they're finding the key there or whatever. And everyone knows that it's not real. Although I will say, when I was a kid, I did think those segments were real. I was a very naive child, okay? I don't want to hear about it. But it's just going to show that production really is starting to loosen up and take themselves less seriously. And I know I've been saying this over and over, but it's about time. Like, yes, there is some, like, self-respect and integrity you have to have for the show you're putting on. Absolutely. But everyone also knows that there's other people that are making things happen and making the game the game. Like, we get it. And they're really starting to just pull that curtain back. Not in a, oh, hey, like, you're seeing the skeletons of our show. Not at all. But they're not pretending nearly as hard that they're not producing a show. It's like Big Brother's finally starting to become a little bit self-aware. And it's great. And to be honest, I think the biggest person and contributing factor we have to think for that is Taylor Hill. Once she was given BB Unlocked, once she got it, she took it and ran with it and turned it into something that, listen, this current episode of BB Unlocked was very cringy. I'm not gonna lie. Jerry is, I have thoughts, but we're gonna save that for a whole nother video. Here's the thing. Taylor does understand what the fans want. And even if there's gotta be some of that other annoying crap mixed into it, she's at least giving us, okay, we got to do that for that side of the audience and those viewers, but I'm trying to give you guys the behind the scenes, the context, the fan experience that us diehard fans are really craving and have been craving for so long and really have not ever received. I had a lot of fun with Rome's eviction speech. I had a lot of fun with the fact that they're just opening things up more. I also have to agree with Julie. I'll agree with Rome, actually, first. I don't think his perspective of his eviction or the circumstances surrounding his eviction was all that off. I think it was pretty on point. All the legends wanted him out. They felt that he was a big enough threat to take him out week 2. That is saying something. I really agree with Julie. Who knows what our opinions would be of him if we saw him further into the season. But from what we saw, I do think he had a pretty classy exit, and I got to give him credit for that. All right, guys, it's spoiler time. We're going to talk live feeds. If you don't want to know what's happened since the Thursday eviction episode, bow out now. But if you don't care, talk about that. But before we do, I did mention we're going to talk about one thing from BB Unlocked, and that is the powers. Let's just go over briefly some of the advantages that were revealed in BB Unlocked. And to be honest, the punishments, if you want to look them up, look them up. Maybe I'll throw them up here now just so you can see what they are, but they're just like unitards. There was one that was actually somewhat interesting to me. Adam and Eve is at least a little bit more annoying because it affects a little bit more of your game, a little bit. The only other one is like Camp Guide. I'm sure that would be very stressful, building the tents, taking it down, putting it up, but whatever, I don't care. We're just gonna go straight to the powers that we have, and this might not be all of them, pretty sure it is, but I might have missed one or two, so bear with me. But we have the BB bribe, which I'm pretty sure I remember last season, Zach having $10,000 as the bribe. I've heard some people say that they think it's going to be $5,000 this season. Let's just say the 5 to 10K range. Whoever wins that is going to have that money to be able to bribe, basically force whatever player they want to, I guess, do whatever they want. We've only had it last season. I'm not really sure how far you can actually go with it in the game, but it's at least interesting. But the two that could really be the biggest game changers, and honestly, probably, at least depending on what side of the house you're on, or unless you're like me and just hate when the game integrity gets destroyed like this, the two I would really pay attention to are the Coin of Destiny, and yes, the Diamond Power of Veto. Because as far as I'm aware, both of those powers basically make whoever won the HOH competition completely useless that week, while also still, as far as I know, robbing them of being able to contribute in the next one, regardless of what happens. At best, the HOH might be safe. Maybe. I don't think on the Coin of Destiny they are, actually. They're not. Because that's how Riley went out, wasn't it? Yeah, it's coming back to me now. Again, depending on which side of the house you're on, if and when those powers ever do come into play, you might love it, you might hate it. But I'm going to be really annoyed and you're going to hear me complain about it if and when it happens. Other than that, guys, all that's left is to cover the feed, spoilers, and we're just going to jump into it. Because some people tried to make it more anticipatory than it needed to be, but it might be a pretty boring week this week. And it might not. We're going to see. Because Kamu won HOH. And initially, I think they were Mallory, Jason, and Lala, actually. That sounds right. But after talking with Angela, she gives some feedback that she really doesn't want either Mallory or Lala to go up. She doesn't want them to be at risk of going home. She likes both of them, and she's really close with them and wants to keep them close to her. Now, she's starting to put her focus on Taylor. Because she's starting to realize Taylor's starting to become more social, starting to build much stronger game, and she hasn't done much, but I do see potential from Taylor as a strategic player. While at this point, in my opinion, she's not all that dangerous, she very well could be. But Angela is over-angelizing. We're gonna, over-angelizing. That's, anyone say that? You say Dak chats. Dak came up with that. You let them know. That's a good one. She starts over-angelizing like she always does and decides, I don't feel all that tight with Taylor. I want to go for Taylor. She tells that to Kamu. And then she goes and builds a new alliance with Lala and Taylor. But it's only a very short matter of time before she already doesn't feel comfortable with Taylor. But ultimately, none of those conversations mattered. The conversation Kamu had later that night with Drew. Remember, I was talking earlier about how Kamu and Drew, they seem to be pretty close so far. After Kamu won HOA, we really started to see that be revealed more. In fact, Kamu himself said, now, I don't know how true this is, but he himself said he's not actually all that comfortable with Haley and Chuck right now in their alliance. And he pointed out to Drew that he does feel really good working with Drew. Now, Kamu did tell Lyric earlier in the night that she was not even on his radar, wasn't even someone he's considering to nominate. But he didn't have any intention of nominating her until after talking to Drew. Ultimately, what we did wind up with was Mallory, Lala, and Lyric. All right, guys, listen, at the time of this recording, the veto hasn't been played yet. So I don't know who won. Certainly don't know who the replacement nominee is going to be, if there even is going to be one. My biggest takeaway this week, I think it has to be Drew. I truly am very blown away and impressed by Drew. Pretty evenly with Angela as well, but I've at least seen some of this from Angela before. But she's never come off as a super strong strategic player, at least not one that was able to execute very strongly. Whereas with Drew, he is definitely getting some targets put on his back. He's definitely starting to have some people question his loyalty to both them and honestly his ability to outplay them. But it also looks like he's got a really good setup with the HOH this week. And as long as that stays exactly how it's been, I don't think Drew's going to go this week at all. And I honestly don't think he's going to have that big of a target on his back for the next few weeks, as long as he does start to die things down just a bit. He's already looking at involving a new alliance with himself, Kamu, Barrett. He wants to bring in, I think, Yash and Devins. Did I say Yash? I don't know if I said Yash. He wants to bring in Yash and Devins. So he's starting to restructure things for himself. He's not just sitting stagnant. But while he does have to do that, he also really has to be careful while doing it. And that's going to be the most interesting thing to me this week, along with just seeing and letting this week kind of expose to us Kamu's gameplay ability. I think this is really going to tell us how far he's going to go and what kind of game he's actually going to be able to pull off in the long run. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this week 2 recap speed. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this week's recap. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for weeks. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this week's recap slash. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this week 2 recap. We're going to have more stuff coming very soon. But so anyway, guys, that's all for this week 2 recap. What did you think? How did you feel about how this week played out? Were you happy with Rome going home? That rhymed. Were you happy with watching how the alliances started to fold and unfold and refold and then transform and conform and terror? How did you guys like that? How are you enjoying this season so far? It's still pretty early in the season for me to call it anything yet, but so far it has been pretty entertaining to me. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel? And let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. If you haven't already and you enjoyed it and you want to see more, subscribe, come back, because I'm Dak, and soon we'll have another chat. And ultimately, what we ended up with for the nominations this week, I do not hate on him for coming, and I just can't hate on him for recognizing that and giving himself prop. And she did this whole bit about the producers staging the finding your key moment at the very premiere of the, and she did a whole bit on her TikTok reel, whatever, and she did a whole bit, and everyone knows that it's not real. I was a very naive child. I don't want to hear about it. Expect the unexpected. Again, depending on which side of the house you're on, if and when those powers ever do come into play, you might love it, you might hate it, but I'm going to be really annoyed and you're going to hear me complain about it if and when it happens. What's up, everyone? I'm Dak. My hair looks whack, and I don't give a crap because I'm back for another BB Sunday service tag. Oh, that was so good. Damn it.